You're listening to Developmental, Property and the Mind podcast, where development industry insight meet mindset with Trafalgar CEO Joe Aboud. Join one of the property industry's most free thinkers as he explores the path to success and contentment.
Hi, my name is Joe Aboud and welcome to this episode of Developmental. Almost 12 months ago, I had a great conversation with Rev Keith Garner, who has held the post of Superintendent of Wesley Mission in Sydney, Australia for the past 15 odd years. The world was a very different place back then, well, since we spoke last anyway. We've since dealt with bushfires, floods, global pandemics. Me personally, I've dealt with an explosion in Beirut, revolutions and all sorts of stuff. You know, it's been nothing short of crazy, you know, for all of us. And I wanted to sort of reconnect with you today, Keith, for a year in review, but also because you're just about to retire from this position, you know, and just things that come to mind to me are what it must be like stepping down from such a key role. And you know, I've been wondering myself about the concept of legacy, and I'm rather excited to explore that in this episode of Developmental. Welcome, Reverend Keith. How are you going today?
Pleasure to be with you again, Joe. Can't believe it's a year since we sat down and talked about some of the things then. So things have happened, some things have changed along the way.
You know, what a year. You know, it's been nothing short of madness, as we discussed, but what's it been like for you? I
mean, there's many things have changed. The way people work has changed. I think that probably they've changed forever. That's the truth of it. I think that here in the city centre, I'm conscious it's a different city that you come into. I think many people will work more flexibly than they've ever worked before. We've had to do that. Except that some of our stuff is face-to-face. When you're helping people in need, you can't get on a Zoom to actually do something about a homeless person or somebody in a hospital. You've got to be face-to-face. So some things have changed, some things haven't. And I think for everybody, it's a year when we've had to look at what we do and how we do it, but also the priorities that we've got have got to be really right, you know, in terms of building development.
You know, something extraordinary happened to me last night. My son used the words, I was sitting with my friend and we were sort of chatting, but, you know, of course he was 1.5 away. The kids these days are now talking social distancing. I'd never heard that before in my life, you know, especially from my son at 10 years old. So anyway,
I don't think I've ever washed my hands as much in my life as I've done this last 6 months. And I think that just caricatures the changes that have come about for all of us.
Yeah, look, I'm concerned about the fact that the over cleanliness might cause another pandemic. You know, I think bacteria has been a normal part of everyone's life to a degree, and you know, some of the cultures still till today eat with their hands, right? So, you know, I think there's something to be said about that. But look, let's live the moment, and you know, as we are at the moment, we're pretty humbled to be a part of your farewell tour. You know, which, you know, I'm grateful for the invitation to your farewell evening, and again, nothing short of spectacular. You've lived an amazing life. A rather humble life, God-like, Christ-like in every aspect, which is, for me, rather inspirational. But, you know, the question begs for me is, does it look anything like what you might have planned for your final year in this current role?
No, not even the remotest planning would have ever imagined it would be like this. We've managed to do more than people think, so we managed even at the end to do things. But I think at the same time, it's made all of us think, how should we do things in the future? Because the last year is always the precursor to the next year. And so really what really matters now for me is how the organisation responds to the challenges that lie ahead in the future. And you and I know some of the things that we've managed to progress, some things have taken longer than we would want them to.
Yeah, look, I think I'd rather do it properly than rush it. I think there's an element of risk management that I think I've taken upon myself pretty seriously, and I know you would rather see things done a little slower and better than rush them and have them, you know, potentially fall over or become challenging. I think we've got enough challenges in our life, which sort of leads me to my next question to you. What are some of the challenges that you've had to navigate through this year? I mean, other than the obvious ones.
I think that some of the priority issues are real for people. I actually think it's dead easy to get too obsessed with the present. And I think some people are, you know, we all talk about is COVID and the latest figures and this, that and the other. I think there is a danger of it becoming a focus when in fact there are other things that have to be a focus and will always be a focus.
So like you can't sort of get to a place where, you know, that controls everything you say and do. I believe it's an issue. I respect the fact that we need to be cautious about all that. I think there's been this great shift in the world at the moment about the way things are said and done, and so there's a bigger thing going on, and
However, our family in London has seen 600 deaths a night in England, so I can't sort of ignore all that. But I think at the same time, we've got to ask questions. I mean, sometimes people say, we're doing very well in Australia. It's not got anything to do with our medical services being better than anybody else's. The fact is, we're at the other end of the world. We can only go to New Zealand and the islands.
Yeah, we're literally down under, right?
Yeah, for sure. And some of that's worked to our benefit, I think, during a time like this.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see how developments and thoughts about the future, when you think that politicians are meeting, in small groups and on Zoom, and councils, that in one of the projects we're doing, we've had to relate to council on Zoom meetings. It's the most unreal world. I'm just interested to see how we manage to navigate that.
Look, I've always been an advocate of working remotely. I've been trying to build a business in Australia, but trying to travel a lot more, changing my lifestyle. So for me, remote access has been an integral part of my future plan. This has played right into that for me to a degree. I've been trying to push people for video conferencing. We've got businesses in other countries, and I've been pushing for that for a long time. Now, by default, everybody thinks it's a great idea, right? Everybody was having a problem with it until it becomes the only option that you have.
Yes.
And so, look, I think that's pretty good for technology. I think we're going to, on the positive side, I think we're going to have a hell of a lot more time on our hands to do things. You cut travelling time down. You don't have to worry about, the time it takes you to get from point A to point B before you go to a meeting. You just click on that camera, you turn that on, you're meeting instantly. It's really efficient in its approach. I think they're all the good bits. I think depersonalizing this thing is a problem. I think we desensitize ourselves to the interaction of our interaction between us and our fellow human beings, I guess.
I think the danger for me is that as I sit and Zoom in a meeting, what I can't really see is the emotions that's going on in the meeting as clearly as I'd like sometimes, because the focus is very often on one person that's speaking. We see the green or the red light saying we're on them. And I think that really is, that's going on all the time, whether you're on a Zoom or not, but this has brought it really home.
Yeah, that's difficult when your periphery vision is really, really good, right? Yeah. And this is normally where you sort of see the reactions and a lot of the body language and all that kind of stuff. I think a lot of people that are very perceptive with that kind of stuff are going to have a more difficult time. But look, I think it'll just work itself out like most things do. So let's have a chat about the idea of legacy. I mean, what does that really mean to you, and why do you think it's so important?
I don't think you need to focus on legacy, you need to create legacy. So I don't think you set out and say, this is what I would like for it to be thought of. But in point of fact, that's what's happening all the time when you're engaged and involved in some project or some life that you're involved in. As I've come to the end of one career, if you like, I never think of it as being the end or the beginning. It just happens to be the next stage, whatever the next stage is, let me say. But the legacy we create is, I think, bound up in the values that we hold to. You can't suddenly say, I've worked for 38 years, but the last 2 years I'm going to make myself a legacy. Your legacy is built up over time. The things you do, the things you say, the relationships you build. Then, in fact, the legacy becomes real. But you can't just suddenly build it. It just doesn't come that way. It comes out of the natural consequence and circumstances of what you do.
Yeah, look, I totally agree. I don't think there's an off and on switch. It's definitely a lifelong process that you live and follow. And as you've done, so well, you've left behind, or you are leaving behind with you an amazing legacy of special projects and various acts of kindness.
Yeah, but I don't think that's. I've built a team of people that make sense of that, really. They deliver what you want them to deliver. So if you get the right values, they will be delivering that, and that'll feed into it. I never think that I'm very cautious about talking about I've achieved something, because I think that's really always, once you've achieved something, you say, well, who else should get the credit? They should.
Yeah, look, that's humble of you, and I respect that. I think at the end of the day, you have to give credit where credit's due, even if it's a little bit of self-gratitude and self-appreciation. I think that's important too, because I think it's difficult in this day and age to do some of the things that you do. I think the world, from time to time gets lost within itself, and before you know it, it's headed in the wrong direction, right? And it takes people like yourself to be able to keep that on track. It doesn't mean that you're the one doing it alone. I never said that at all. I don't think you can build a business. I don't think you can build a congregation. I don't think you can build anything. I don't think you can clap with one hand, right? Or some people think they can. But for mine, it takes somebody like yourself, Keith, to inspire, to empower is the word I like to use. I like to empower the people that I work with. I don't control them. I think leadership is empowerment. I think you do that incredibly well. I've worked with you. I've sat with you on a board table. I've sat with you in the room. I've sat with you in mass. I've sat with you in a lunch and a dinner and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things you do, extremely well is you encourage and you empower. And I think that's a special trait in itself, where other people have, the wrong perception of leadership, and they think leadership is controlling, wielding a stick, right? But I don't think that's the case, and I think you've done that extremely well.
I don't think many people get up in the morning to be a bad person. I don't think many people get up and say, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and it's going to be a very harmful thing. I think most people start with a kind of clean sheet and want that day to go well.
Yeah.
But maybe by 10 o'clock,
we forget, right?
Some things happen that make it difficult to do that. For me, I've always thought what we've got to look for is the sweet spot in a person, whoever they are, whether they're the bloke down the street, the Prime Minister, the woman that serves you in the shop, whatever their role is, to see what it is that's going to turn them on to being a better person.
But what helps you remember that?
Oh, I don't know. The answer to that is I don't know. I just know that you have to do, and you have to do it, don't you, regularly. And I'm also conscious that people make errors and mistakes, and you've got to give people a bit of latitude and give them some scope when things are tough and when they go wrong. And for me, in terms of staff, some of my most important moments are when you've been able to do something that people don't expect, because you're going further than they might have envisaged.
Yeah, the element of surprise is always an amazing thing, especially if it's an act of kindness. It never surprises me how the act of kindness, but using that element of surprise, seems to throw people off guard. Even your response to things, like if people ask you, how are you today? Normally most people say not bad.
Yeah.
That seems to be the normal thing. Our response generally seems to be excellent or fantastic, and it never ceases to amaze me, their reaction to using the words excellent or fantastic or amazing, or some of these words that people don't normally use, right? So the element of surprise there is in fact a gift in itself, right? Because you catch them off guard, you kind of snap them out of this unconscious realm that they seem to be living in, and then they start to think, geez, excellent, what do you mean by that? Who's excellent? I know anybody that's excellent, right? So, I kind of use that as a little bit of a tool to remember, or remind them to remember about how awesome, being alive today really is, right?
I think also giving people the chance to help you is a very, very important thing to
that's empowerment.
Yeah, it is. Because you can empower people by telling them they're good enough, or you can say, I need you to help me. And that gives them a real sense of they're buying into whatever it is that you are doing.
Yeah. One of my favourite questions to people sometimes when they'll ask me about, oh, look, how do you think I should do this? I'll look back at them and say, so if this was your business, what would you do? And they said, oh, well, I'd do 1, 2, and 3. I said, okay, well, go ahead and do that. So then all of a sudden it becomes their idea. And I think that sense of empowerment really helps them. It projects them forward within themselves and also within their position and their career, So legacy, let's go back to legacy for a second. Why do you think that's so important?
Because, in fact, none of us are playing in a pool or a pit that's simply of our own making. We're all part of a bigger story. So once we acknowledge that, and that we've only become who we are because of the people whose shoulders we've stood on, if that's the case, then clearly we've got to recognise there's another end to that story, and that's the story that we're at the bookend of, where we've got to enable other people. So legacy is what you leave that enables other people to stand on your shoulders. And I think that that's so critically important, and if you don't do that, if you don't recognise the contribution that you're making is actually going to be not just now, but a long way into the future.
So there's some of the building blocks that you hope to sort of leave behind for the future? Is that the idea?
Yeah, but that's one part of it. I think secondly, for yourself, your own sanity, you mustn't see yourself as the end of the story, because you get utterly depressed if you thought, this is the end now, there's nothing else to be. Well, of course, there's plenty to be yet.
Because I think knowing or owning the fact that the next person that's coming through is going to do it, just somewhat differently to you is okay as well, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be our way. Like it's the way we would do it, and these are the objectives we need to achieve. But somebody else might come and meet the same objectives that you set in the overall plan or the long-term plan, but do it that little bit different, and that's okay too, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've just been through a process where my last month has been a handover period. That's in itself quite a fascinating period to be in. But I've not thought of that in a negative way. And I don't think we should ever feel any threat by that, really, because a handover period I think it takes an enormous amount out of you to do it properly, and we don't want to help people to make a mess of it. We don't want it to help people to feel in awe of us. We just need to help them to move into the place.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of writing my last will and testimony, to be honest, right? It's kind of very daunting. I think the most difficult 3 months of my life were paying some attention or not pay, or trying to avoid it for a month or two as well. It's kind of like you're not leaving today, but you have to kind of think of what the future holds. You got to look into, what are some of the short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals or milestones that you want to try and achieve as an organisation, or as a company, or as a person, or whatever the case may be. And then you got to sort of somehow put that into words, right? And then after that, once you start putting into words, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't the sense of reality sort of set in at that point? I mean, your handover must have been a bit of a reality check in itself, right?
Yes, I think that's true. It is, when you're talking about somebody and you've got all their resume, you've met them, it's one thing, but when they're in the next room, it's quite another thing, really, really, because they're then talking
reality
and asking. Yeah, that's right. But I think that if we're going to be anything of a legacy, anything of a building for the future, we have to learn to do that well, don't we?
Yeah, look, I think so. So future. What does the future hold for you now?
Oh, look, travelling, of course, which is the most ridiculous statement of all to make at the moment. My wife and I were going to do a lot of travelling next year, visiting family, not only in the UK, but in Ireland, Canada. We were going to do a lot of that sort of stuff.
Right.
But at the moment, that doesn't look very good. We're hoping for New Zealand, but who knows? And really, there never was an intention in year one, this year that I finished, to do a job straight away. Even though there have been those people who've been saying, what about this and what about that? But I have agreed to do one thing, and that is a weekly radio presentation on British radio, and I've got the gear to send things across. And I'll enjoy doing that. I won't find that onerous in any way. I'll enjoy doing it. So I'm going to do that.
So talk to me about that. What does that entail?
Well, it entails learning how to use equipment at home that I've never used before. It means for 6 minutes every week on a Saturday morning, I'll be talking into British radio, and I think that will be, fascinating. It has to be done not too far ahead, so that it's contemporising the situation at the moment.
So through the ministry, though, or with that kind of a flavour, or
more than with that flavour, but with very much a contemporary what's happening in the world around us at this point in time feel.
Okay. Okay.
So when I was asked to do that, I said, yeah, I can. Not only can I have a go at that, I'll enjoy doing that.
It's a bit different for you. So
yeah, sure it is.
It'll be interesting.
I'll do that. Some churches said, what about you come and lead? I said, why would I leave where I am now to go and do that? Because that's so much like what I'm doing now. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And there is a possibility of doing some consultancy work in the long term, helping people in similar professions. One of the things I've been trying to do is help people who are beginning careers in leadership to ask questions about what sort of leadership should I be doing? What should be the priorities for me as I enter.
mentoring.
That sort of thing, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I might hit you up for that.
Yeah.
That sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
We may be able to work together with that. And I see that you've written the book Faith, Compassion, and the Challenge of Business. What I understand that book to be, which in my opinion is so fascinating, is the manner in which you've been able to continue doing business, but in a compassionate way and not losing the faith, so to speak. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I can, because I think that to some extent, many people, first of all, they think of people who are in the faith sector, we'll call it the faith sector, that they can't really do proper business, and that cheeses me off beyond measure.
Look, and I disagree with that, totally.
I just think it's completely wrong.
What's being good got to do with doing business?
Yeah.
I think it's everything to do with doing business. I think if you do it good, you do it well.
Yeah.
You do well by doing good, right?
Yeah. I also think that it's true that compassion can be related to decent business as well. I mean, I think that people who are not compassionate very often do poor business. So I think it's a tool to actually care for people. And if we're involved in the sectors I've been involved in, I mean, at the moment, for example, aged care, disability, they're all under enormous pressure from government and society. But that doesn't mean to say we can't do good business if we're going to be involved in these things.
Yeah, look, I think the joint project we're doing with Wesley, and that you and I have sort of led well is a classic example of that.
Yeah.
I think we've brought big business into doing some compassionate work in society that deals with mental health, which, like I said, when I first embarked on homelessness, mental health was not a thing for me. I didn't realize that mental health was a bigger issue within the realm of homelessness than poverty. I didn't realize that was the case, and through your good self and the team around us, we started to understand that. And I think what we're doing at the moment together is the perfect example of using, compassion and faith as a way to solution, I guess, a facility to help with the mental health and the homelessness and a myriad of things, right? It's displacement of families, it's mental health, it's all of those things all there. And funny enough, most of the people that suffer from that were probably once business people, right? Or were probably once very successful in their own right, and for one reason or another, people have lost their way, if that's even the right description. I
remember us talking at the very beginning about the people that you saw in Martin Place near the office here and elsewhere.
Which drove me to that.
Yeah, which saw you through that first door, as it were,
that's right.
Of homelessness.
Totally.
But in reality, if you sit down and talk with most of these people, you'll find that something has caused that dysfunctionality somewhere in their story. And very often it's been a breakdown of health in one way and another. Very often it's mental health issues.
Well, we did that at your Surrey Hills facility when we visited with you, and that was an eye-opener in itself for me.
Yeah.
Just being in the company or being within the facility, and also, you opened a few doors for us, literally, into some of the rooms and some of the pieces of accommodation, and we met some of the people, and also the way in which they live and all that kind of stuff is a real eye-opener to a world that most people are not privy to and don't understand. And I think through the work of people like your good self, I think we'll together try and solution through that and come up with these facilities that, hopefully will become a integral part of the solution itself.
And very often you have to see it to be able to start doing something about it,
Yeah, I think our architects in our office got so much out of visiting the facilities early in the piece. They got an understanding of how to plan that on paper and how to do all those things there that we're not just going to come up with a facility that did not function in the correct manner, right? So I think the site visit and the experience on ground is priceless. So Keith, there are some things that are really close to your heart, we know. How do you want to continue playing a role around these issues moving forward?
Well, I think that there'll still be an advocacy role, I think, for anybody who's serious about these issues. And for me, it isn't just homelessness, it's gambling addiction and some of those things that really are some. When I think of Australia, you would never convince me coming from the UK that this would be the gambling capital of the world, really, per capita of people. And it is.
Well, the problem is there's not much else to do for some of these people, and they seem to resort to those kind of things.
I think that might be true, but I think we kind of we encourage it too. It's something that's become part of our culture, you know. Not two flies walking up a wall, but, you know, poker machines in suburbs and all that goes with it. I think there is an element of that it meets needs, you know, of people. Yeah. But I think it's really raises questions about priorities. So that would be something. I think the question of homelessness isn't going to go away, so I should be happy to be involved in advocating for that. But I think above all else, it's helping people to see that they too can make a difference. I mean, that would be the greatest, for me, the greatest thing you can do is to bring people on from where they are to realise, oh yeah, I could actually do this. And for leaders to think they could actually become quite significant people in the right terms, in the right circumstances.
Well, Keith, you've certainly made a difference to us. You've certainly made a difference to the community. You've made a difference to homelessness. You've made a difference to the church. You've made a real difference in this life, and we're forever grateful for having you. And again today, thanks for having another chat with us. And hopefully, by the time you go and come back on one of these journeys, we'll have another chat very soon.
Lovely. And I wish you well too, you know, and want you to be more and more involved with Wesley Mission with some of the projects that we're doing.
You've got me, and I'm hard to get, as I say to some people. Yes. You know, I'm heavily invested in that now on a personal level.
Yes.
Like I promised you at your farewell. You're in safe hands, you're in good hands with this particular project, and if it's the last thing I do on this earth, I'll deliver that with you and for you, and for Wesley, and more importantly for the people that suffer on a daily basis. Sure. I think that's the least that I can do to give back. I've been blessed through hard work and perseverance through some challenging times in our life, and I think it's befitting of me, I guess, to do something to give that back. And again, wonderful to have been given the opportunity by yourself through Wesley. It wouldn't have happened without you either. So I'm so grateful for that, and for you, thank you very much.
My pleasure. It's lovely to meet you and know you.
Thank you, my friend.
Thanks for listening to Developmental, Property and the Mind podcast. Stay tuned for our next episode, available wherever you get your podcasts. Or to talk to Joe, visit trafalgar.com.au. That's TRIFALGA.com.au.